I think our best intentions, they say like the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Like those first 14 years were paved with good intentions, but I think inevitably what in my desire to like try to redirect or correct, or I didn't allow her a safe place to process emotion or experience challenge. And because I would take it personal, I would think, oh, well, I need to fix this situation. And I would take that as a burden, and nobody wants to feel like a burden. And so naturally I've learned that if I was to encourage my son with anything, like, in your wife's process, don't take it personal. You gotta remain secure and keep a safe place for her to want you to be the one person she runs to when she's in process.
What is up, my friends? Welcome to Rebel and Create's Fatherhood Field Notes podcast, where I interview incredible fathers, gaining wisdom from their stories for you and I to grow in our craft. I'm your guide, Ned Shout, father to 5 kiddos, currently ages 10 to 17, and husband to my rad wife, Sarah, working on our 20th year of marriage. So yeah, I'm in the thick of it, and I'm working daily to rebel against the low expectations for fathers and create a world where fathers know who they are as they show up for their families. You and I have the greatest opportunity to impact our world through the way we embrace our fatherhood role. This episode is brought to you by the Adventure of Fatherhood, helping men discover their powerful fatherhood role and build their fatherhood skills. The role of the father is to serve, guide, provide, protect, and of course, find joy and have fun in the messiness of it all. Today's guest is my friend Davidson Brooks, and since moving to Hawaii, we have become solid friends. He is raising his 6 children with incredible grace, intention, and freedom. Enjoy meeting my friend Davidson. All right, my friends, super pumped to be talking to my friend Davidson. Davidson, we've been talking about doing a podcast together for a while. How are you today?
I'm doing well.
Dude, and here we are, probably a terrible decision. 2 dads on a Monday at 8:23 at night. This is probably the time where we have the least amount of energy in the entire week.
Yeah, I could see that. I had a pretty busy weekend.
Dude, Mondays are just always like especially if Sunday's a restful day, I come to Mondays and it's almost like this, just like, oh shit, I forgot how much I have on my plate. It's just like a reminder of all the things that I said I would do. What's Monday like for you?
Yeah. Oh, I definitely agree. I think Mondays come and it's like, it always comes way faster than you're prepared for. And you're like left to be like, okay, get my head around this week again. Kind of trying to settle things, get into the rhythm again.
Here we go. Yeah, dude. Well, here we are. We're smiling. So this is real dad life right here. All right. How old do you find yourself today?
I always listen to your podcast and I hear that question. I think, man, like, well, how old do I find myself? I mean, there's days where like my body just feels so broken and I'm like, oh, I definitely feel 40. And then I've lived a bit of a life, so I could imagine I feel like I've lived like 10 lifetimes. I'd say I feel my age. I'm not quite 40. I'm 39, but it's right around the corner.
You're on your way, baby. Nice. Okay. Mm-hmm. And then how many years you been married?
16.
16 years. And you guys just have a couple kids. How many kids you guys got?
We got 6.
6 kids. Got me beat by 1. And then all of them have their names start with S, correct?
Yeah.
And is there like a reason behind that?
My wife's a creative. She likes patterns. So I think like originally, prior to us even being married, we had she'd always had the name Selah, and we didn't. I mean, she played such a vital part in our story with getting married. So like Selah was there. And then when we kicked off that name, it's like she does a lot of patterns. So we have like middle names all have Y.
Oh,
so
really?
Like S is yeah. So she always had envisioned a family of, we had a vision of 5, and then the 6 was a God story. But the reality was S's was the original because we always knew we'd have Selah. And then after that, it was like, well, every other name coming after this would have to be starting with an S.
I like it.
So if it was an R, we would have had every kid with an R.
That probably would have been harder, I'm thinking, than S. S probably gives you a few good options. So Salo is probably a good one to start with. And then what's the age range from youngest to oldest? What's the oldest and the youngest?
We had 5 kids in 7 years. We went back to back. It was and it's 13, 12, 10, 8, 6, and then a 1-year-old.
And then you're done, or what?
Yeah, we're done. I officially got it taken care of.
Love it, bro. All right. And then where do you guys live? Where do you guys live as a family?
We live down the road from you. We're up. We're on the Big Island, Kona, Kailua, Kona.
Now, your family has lived in a few spots, though. So, like, from getting married, what are some of the spots that you've lived?
My wife and I, we moved 27 times in the first 12 years of our marriage.
Oh my gosh.
That's not all location wise. We just counted.
Yeah. So like, what's the major? So the major areas.
The majors, obviously, Hawaii's been home base, but we spent about 5 years on Oahu. My wife's from Oahu, so we were there, and then we lived in South Africa. Spent time in California, Colorado, Washington, and then the Big Island's probably been our longest stint. We've been here on and off the last 20 years.
Yeah.
And yeah.
And then growing up
on little short trips.
Yeah. And then where'd you grow up?
I was born in Indonesia, and I spent about 10 years of my childhood there in different regions of Indonesia. So we were in the highlands. I got flown in on a Cessna and like dropped into the mountains of Indonesia, and we lived there with like pretty primitive till I was about 5. And then we moved into the city of Jayapura, and then we moved around a bit, but we settled in Texas when I was about 11, 12. And then I was there until I 2 days out of high school, and I moved.
Yeah. Love it. What have you found, just briefly, I mean, it's what you knew, but your worldview compared to others, as growing up, not in the States. And then second, maybe something about that. And then something about your marriage, spending time overseas. How did that, impact your guys' marriage in a positive way?
I think having spent time as a kid internationally and then coming back to the States, they have this term third culture where you're kind of like, you don't quite know where you fit a little bit. So like you never feel at home necessarily in the US, or you don't feel necessarily at home anywhere. So you have this natural itch to want to like experience cultural things. It's like there's like somewhat of a instinctive like curiosity to culture. And so like being that my wife's from Oahu and she was born and raised in the same home and having a total different childhood. Yeah. But as you know, Hawaii's very cultural. It's not quite like the mainland. And so when I came here, it was like, wow, this is like hitting just all my values. Like I have culture, I have like experience where there's a rich, deep culture. And then also like I have access to, the US and the opportunities that offers. So I think that answers your question.
Yeah, totally.
Okay.
So then what about when you guys, were married and you went and lived in South Africa for a bit, you're going somewhere different, and she was raised here. Did you find that brought you guys closer together? That the work you guys did brought you close together? Like, talk to me about that for a minute.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was definitely more difficult for my wife. Mm-hmm. For me, like the more challenging the culture, like the more I can find myself like engaging with it. One thing with transition, like I found it's natural people to like lean into what's comfortable. And so when you get overseas and you start living in that kind of environment, nowadays we have so much access to things that can bring us home. Like you can be on Instagram, you can be in these social like online connective moments, but in reality, like you're in another country while you're still experiencing your home life.
Yeah.
And so for me, I've made it intentional to like dive into the culture, go eat the food, go be with the people. I'd walk the neighborhood and spend time with like locals, just because it may not have felt like natural to want to do that. But as I did, I found myself really engaging with the place. For my wife, being in South Africa, it's a lot harder for women. And so she can't naturally go do a lot of the things on her own. It's just not safe.
Got it.
And so it was a bit of a challenging place. Like, had we gone somewhere, maybe like we spent time in Brazil, and she thrived. It was a different experience, but it's a lot of crossover with Hawaii and Brazil, where South Africa is super different.
Did you guys find yourselves leaning on each other a lot during that season?
Yeah, I think there was a yes and no. I think I've done a lot of growing up since then. I think it's natural for you to not quite understand somebody's emotional challenging moments when you're so not maybe necessarily challenged by it. So you want to say, just do this, figure this out. Why don't you do this? And so sometimes I can almost put a wedge between the relationship. Whereas now I would be like, oh, I'd sit with such more understanding. But yeah, I think there's elements that drew us closer. Having those experiences, definitely looking back, have been rich. But sometimes in the moment, like I can imagine, like as you have been through hard things, like it in the moment doesn't feel too great, but afterwards it's deep in things.
Yes. Yeah, dude, you and I, which we're going to get into this to some extent probably, but we just did a camping trip with the boys, which I want to talk about, but
yeah.
But you and I had like a good hour and a half conversation all the way home from camping. It was just you and me in the front seat. The boys, I think, crashed out in the back seat. But talking about that, sitting and understanding of your wife's emotions. And really, I mean, some of those conversations can't really even happen until you're like maybe 15, 20 years in, and you've done some work to dig into when there's those like freaking headbutts, which is going to happen if you are married to the opposite sex.
Yeah.
You have choices, right? You can become passive and just kind of do your own thing, or you can like dig in. Do you have any thoughts on that before I just kind of was bringing it up that we had spent a good time talking about that?
Yeah, I would say, I only think that I actually learned how to be married after 14 years of marriage. Like, I would say our marriage, like the level of relationship we have now in the last 3.5 years is night and day from the first 14. You have these pivotal shifts, these like revelatory moments where you're just like, I get it. I connect. I understand now. And I'm hard headed. I just didn't figure it out for so long.
Dude, it gave me chills you saying that. So in case we don't come back to this, just because I'm sure we could talk for like 3 hours. If we don't come back to this, that statement, I learned how to be married after 14 years, like that's heavy. If you were to tell a dude, what are the one or two, like couple nuggets of what was that shift that made it where like, oh shit, I know how to be married now. Not that it makes it all, rainbows and unicorns, but to be able to say that statement, what are a couple nuggets that you had to dig into?
The one that like, I think for me I think our best intentions, they say like the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Like those first 14 years were paved with good intentions, but I think inevitably what in my desire to like try to redirect or correct or sit with my wife and her, I didn't allow her a safe place to process emotion or experience challenge. And because I would take it personal, I would think, oh, well, I need to fix this situation. And I would take that as a burden, and nobody wants to feel like a burden. And so naturally, I've learned that if I was to encourage my son with anything, like, you know, in your wife's process, don't take it personally. You gotta remain secure and keep a safe place for her to want you to be the one person she runs to when she's in process.
Okay, so bro, so when you and I were talking, I've been uncovering quite a bit of things lately in my pursuit of really making my marriage a priority. And so one of the main things you and I talked about in the car was providing emotional security, right? Like as men, we are supposed to provide security, but emotional security. Last night, one of our kids, had a little meltdown, pissed us off. Dude, me and my wife were on a high, bro, from the last couple of days. And then I could see her walking around like full of frustration. I could see it on her face. So I went up and I'm like, dude, what's up? Like calling it out. But I wasn't asking for you to tell me your emotion. I'm basically like, pull your head out of your ass and not let this bother you. So then obviously the night fell apart. But then this morning, this morning when I was journaling, one of the questions I asked this morning is like, how did I not show up how I wanted to yesterday? And your words were ringing in my head like, dude. And so I'm playing back that moment of us standing at the counter where I didn't say pull your head out of your ass, but in so many words, right? Like, whatever.
No, totally.
And I'm like, man, if I would have said something around, like leaning into what you had talked about, if I would have said, dude, like, what are you feeling right now? Like, this is crazy. What are you feeling? And gave her the opportunity to express that and not feel like a burden. Okay, that's huge. I didn't catch on to that. But that piece, because when I'm asking her, like, dude, what's up? Like, why are you... She's now feeling like a burden on top of it. So anyways, dude, this morning, your words were ringing in my head and I was like journaling about it this morning, which was good. It was good. But the emotional security was powerful.
Yeah.
And I failed at it.
I think it's quick. Yeah. For years, it was like, I could show up physically and be like, I have the energy to show up in other ways, but I had no grid with how to even... I don't think a lot of men come into manhood or adulthood with a real strong understanding of how to work through emotion. Our first emotion is just anger, And so learning to know what's underneath that layer of anger is a difficult and slow process to work through.
Yeah. And do you think it's do you think it's possible to just figure it out, or do you need to have somebody guide you through it? Whether that's a counselor, a mentor who's been there before you, conversations with other men. Like, what are your thoughts?
Oh yeah. No, I definitely think that you need models, you need people,
models,
whether or not they're, we're all products of people who've modeled things before. So my father modeled his way of handling stress, and I operated very similar to that for years. And then other models, maybe coaches and whatnot, or I think the emotional piece. And when I went through the counseling process and understanding how to work through that stuff, they would do practice sessions where you would actually practice the process, and it changed. Yeah, it really, one of the biggest shifts in my life, having been able to have someone walk me through that, was incredible.
Powerful. And then the book you told me to read, which I just downloaded but I haven't started, what's that? Redeeming Love?
Oh yes, that's a fictional book. That or nonfiction. I get those confused. Is nonfiction the one where it's not factual?
Fiction is fake. Nonfiction is real.
Fake. Okay, it's a fictional book. But when I was going through a hard time in my marriage and working through that, a friend suggested that. And it's just one of the most profound understandings of how to love a woman, how to walk in a relationship and be a man when it comes to loving a wife.
Guys, it's like a lot of us are here listening to this because we care about fatherhood. And sometimes I think that's easier to care about. But one of the best things we can do for our kids is love our wives well and fight for that, because it's going to make you feel like a man. It's going to show your son what it's like to be a man. It's going to show your daughters what it means to be fought for. So super, super critical. All right, dude, I'm going to kind of skip a couple stories or a couple of questions, and I'm going to go into a couple stories. One of them is, you and I have known each other for about a little over a year now. Our kids are hanging out. We've had some times hanging out. But one of the things that really impressed me was our sons got into a fight. And as a dad, I called you. I'm like, hey, this is what's up. Our kids got in a fight, or one of us called the other, whatever. And I said, hey, what if we got the boys together and kind of had the four of us sit down? And in some situations, maybe that would work well. But I liked and respected your approach to it. And you had the suggestion of letting them figure it out on their own. And that was really interesting to me, to not step in and just to step back, right? So they're like 13 and 11 at the time or something like that, right? Kind of roll with the same crew. But what was it that kind of gave you that thought or foresight or perspective? Because they're homies again. Like that was whatever. I don't even know how long. That was probably 7-8 months ago. And they're tight, dude, hanging out, sleepovers all the time, surf all the time, blah, blah, blah. What gave you that perspective for that situation?
A lot of things I learned from my wife. If I'm honest, there was a few circumstances where I'd witnessed my wife actually share with my kid. And I thought, wow, that's profound. She come have like a really challenging experience group and a lot of tears. And my instinct as the father was step in. But like going back to a lot of what we had shared about me, my wife's approach was like let her feel it. Like this is part of life. Like we all be challenged with hard things. There's going to be people in our lives that come up and hurt you, and not just to come in and try to fix it, but like let them work through it. And so we just let her work through it. And then as she did, she took the ownership and the ability to show and kind of like and take her own power, empower herself to like handle the situation. And if we jump in too quickly, we take the empowerment opportunity for them to like see how they're going to handle it. Because if they can handle it in these small things when they're young, when they're faced with harder things as they get older, like, and we've always come to the rescue in those situations, they haven't built up that endurance or that ability to like, just have the capacity for even harder circumstances, as as we've faced as we've grown and gotten older. Like you're going to hit even more challenging opportunities. So it's not to say that you're not there for them and you don't let them process with you and you don't encourage it in a correct direction. But when it comes to like, hey, let's just see how they play this out. And if they take your words to heart and they learn the next time they're faced with it, they had a win on their own, then that next time it'll be a bigger win.
And even if they have a fail, right? If you're jumping in too often and you don't let them fail at it, then they don't learn. Damn it, I wish I would have done it differently. Because it's a lot different when you are the one telling yourself, I wish I did it differently. It's so funny, right?
But the intention you had was right. Like that's what I meant by good intentions. Like even good intentions don't often are the best intentions.
Yeah. All right, dude. That's powerful. I love that. I think dads. And okay, so interesting, because you said you learned this from your wife a lot. I think a lot of men are. This is a guess, okay? My guess is that a lot of men would like to let their kids fail more, but their wife doesn't want to let the kids fail. And ladies, if you're listening and that feels like a total generalization, I'm sorry. But what are your thoughts, or what would you say to the dude whose wife is like overly protective of the kids? How does he step up and go like, hey, little Timmy needs to figure this shit out himself this time? Or, you know what I'm saying? How would you coach a dad in that process?
I would seek to understand their wife and then try to meet her with curiosity. And then as time goes and you have the opportunity, share your perspective and see where it lands. I mean, every circumstance, like you said, is different. So like, I can't just say like all, like there's times to step in. So your wife might say step in and you're like, no, we need to do it this way. And she could be right, you
Yeah.
know? So I think I know what you're implying though. There's always the one that's probably, more inclined to like feel, especially when there's certain pain triggers. Like if you had a painful situation when you were a kid and that thing really triggers you when you see your kid go through it, you're more inclined to like want to like comfort in your kid in that process rather than let him feel it. Because you know how sensitive that is. And so like it ebbs and flows. Like there's certain things that trigger my wife that I'm like, whoa, slow down, you know? So it's not always like that she's doing that process. I am sometimes the one to like slow it down as well.
Yeah. Okay. So dude, here's the craft to fatherhood, bro, that you shared. There is no right and wrong. There is no black and white. As a father and in tune with the mom, you said seek understanding. Now that doesn't mean that you will understand, but the intention of seeking to understand puts you in not a defensive place. And then you said seek understanding and curiosity, because if there's something that's triggering your wife about this situation, very well could be it's from their own story, right? So what is it from their own story? And then how do all of you grow? And I think that's the piece that as a dad, if you can step out of your own, like you said at the beginning, talking about learning to be married after 14 years is not taking it personal. So even in this situation, stepping out of yourself, don't take it personal, seek to understand, be curious, and then assess the situation openly.
Yes, exactly. You brought it up. You put it into a formula for me.
Dude, if I did that every time, bro, there would be more peace in this house.
Right. I'm not saying I do it right every time. I mean, I got 14 years of bad patterns too.
But then again, we wouldn't be able to speak to it or engage in it or even mess up tomorrow if we didn't have this, all of the stories that we've accumulated, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, next story that really, I can remember where we were standing. That's how impactful. Okay, so I remember where I was sitting. The conversation about you, me, and our sons, you and I were on the phone. I was in a rocking chair in my backyard, the right corner of the pool. Like it was an impactful moment. The second story that impacted me, we're standing out by your truck in my front yard. Your truck's facing up the hill. The door's open. We're both standing in front of it. Like, I don't remember moments like this unless they're impactful. But I felt comfortable enough to ask you, it was something about, I know one of your children several years ago had a significant illness, but I never really heard you talk about it as a family. And so I asked you, why is this something that's not like spoken of as a family? But your reasoning was remarkable to me. And that was, it is our child's story, not our story. And so you can unpack why you did that, but I'll tell you, it shifted a lot because when people asked us why we moved to Hawaii, it was always, because Brody's health, he had allergies, blah, blah, blah. So after that conversation, I went to Brody and I'm like, hey, dude, does it bother you? Like when people ask us why we moved to Hawaii and we're like, oh, Brody's health. And he's like, yeah, I actually don't like it at all. And that never occurred to me. So whenever he's around, like I've 100% shifted my language to not make him feel like the reason why we moved here. So one, thank you for that. And two, what was it that led you guys to that perspective?
Well, going back to, I think to make it so the audience knows, like my daughter got cancer. She was diagnosed with leukemia when she was 5. And as you can imagine, I probably like definitely it was a bit of a shocker. And we were really, I mean, we were coming off of a hard season. And then to have that was kind of the cherry on the sundae of like, whoa, how are we going to walk this out? we're really a family of faith. So like, with everything, we do tend to go to the Lord with it and ask him, like, just obviously, like, I don't think we would have survived had we not. Mm-hmm. But like in the moment that we were getting a lot of people calling and reaching out, and there was quite a handful of people who had also had kids with cancer. Not everyone we knew, but as we did get a handful of them reach out, we started to, follow them on social media and stuff. And we noticed that a large portion of them would just have once their kid had cancer, like their whole story would be about their family's a cancer family. And I'm not trying to go, that's not to say that that's wrong. I just, for our family, as we prayed about it, like we didn't want to give that much authority to it, I guess. And I talked with one guy specifically as I was in process, and his kid had cancer. And he actually made the statement, he's like, this is your child's story. And that stuck with me.
Yeah.
And so it didn't necessarily mean that he told me that we shouldn't make it a thing, but I took it that way. It's like, wow, this really isn't our family story. Although it is, it's not to say that we didn't have, that's part of our story. Cause, in your case too, like, it's not that you didn't move to Hawaii only because your kid had asthma, but it was a part of it. He does do better here. He is healthier.
Yep.
So it's not like, it's not black and white, but like for us, we didn't give it a ton of attention to where all of a sudden our life was now shaped by it. Our family's life was shaped by it. And that's what I meant by, like, we wanted other things to be the highlights of our family, not just this cancer that felt like it could have robbed so much from us.
Yeah. And so, I mean, in knowing your family, I mean, just a couple of like cool things is like that season is over, and not in a and I don't want to, two things. I don't think that from my perspective, it's not like it was buried, like, oh, this is dark and we don't talk about it. It's not that.
Yeah.
But it's also not the other extreme of, oh, did you know our daughter had cancer 7 years ago? You know what I mean? It's like you're talking about, 10 years ago, this. And it's not bad to bring up in the context, but the point that I really like about it is you're continuing to live your life. And yes, those things shaped who you are, but they're not defining or the core identity of who you are moving forward. And I just thought like those things are powerful, because I think too much of the time we'll either, I don't know, I guess it just seems as though you guys processed it well. Like it's not something that's been buried, and it's not something that's just like being drug along and in a way that maybe would be not super healthy for everybody to be hearing, for your kid to hear you bring it up at every dinner party you're at or every new friend you meet,
Yeah. I will say this. We're far, but with those circumstances in a marriage, especially, like, you hear those as being like, real crossroads for marriages, whether or not they're going to survive. And we've both, Tiff and I, have tackled all those challenges in a marriage. But that one, I think, with grief like that, everyone grieves differently. And so, like, my wife grieved differently than I grieved. And I didn't have language for this. Everything's in hindsight.
Right.
But as we grieve differently, like, it does disconnect you when you have somebody who like me, I withdrew from people in this season. My wife found herself drawn towards people to like make her friends and that. And so like that can sometimes reflect on how maybe you perceive somebody's reaction to a situation. And so in our case, she'd be like, are you okay? And I'd be like, you seem okay. Like, it wasn't just that we had it and we figured it out. Like, it drew us into a really dark season as well. So I don't want to give it the impression that like we did it, we got it, we understood it. Like, a lot that came out of that unfolded, and the pain that surfaced and stuff did have its course. And I would say now, looking back, like, um, I don't really divulge information like that. But if you were to talk to me, it wouldn't be that there isn't an element of our story in that for sure. Like we definitely have our own story with it. But
Yeah, but okay, so here's what I'm hearing though. So it doesn't change anything that we've said, because what you just told me is like, because we went through it, right?
mm-hmm.
And I think that
Yes, we
so
definitely went
that's
through it.
huge, right?
That's good.
So some people don't go through it. They just freaking bury that down, or they don't deal with it at all. And so the thing is like, dang, dude, I bet it was so hard. I bet it was so hard for you, for your wife, for your kid, for the siblings. I bet it was so hard. But to me, the way that you guys talk about it, the way that you show up as a family now, shows me that you went through it, which doesn't mean that there wasn't a bunch of pain during that process.
Yeah.
Right. But the fact that you're still married, you're still together, and it obviously shaped you guys in certain ways, but it didn't define you, I guess.
Yes. Yeah. It didn't become our identity.
Yes.
It didn't become like, well, yeah.
But the grief, like you said, like the pain that you went through did shape the character of you, the character of your wife, the character of your marriage. And I think that ultimately,
without question.
Yeah, if we have to go through pain, I mean, that's what we should be walking through on the other side, right? Is character shaping, which is total choice and total work. And I'm sure there was ups and downs through the whole thing. But from an outside family's perspective, that's what I see.
And that's encouraging. That's good to hear.
Yeah, dude. Okay. Third story. I want to hear from your perspective. So you, me, and two other dads had this idea that like our sons are going back to school. We want to have a father-son weekend. I mean, dads, let me say this to you. Just to get the four of us to sit down and have a conversation about this took like 6 weeks. So I don't want it to seem like we just have the time. It was like, okay, what about this day? No, what about this day? Okay, Saturday morning at 7 a.m. we're going to meet and chat for an hour. Then we had like 2 emails go back and forth, a couple of chats, and then we just showed up with a basic format that we made, and we did about half of it. And so I lay that out to go like, it's not like we met every Monday for 3 hours and planned this like perfectly ideal thing. Most dudes don't have time for that. So I share that because you can do this too. Just make it up, go make it happen. But there was one experience we did that just happened to nail. And I would love for you to share from your perspective what we did. And then we could talk about it for a minute.
Yes. Oh man, I just remember like you and I walking through the darkness and being like geeking out, like, dude, we're doing it. This is awesome.
Yeah.
It was so good.
It was so good.
We had come up, I don't know who drew, it kind of like was an accumulation of all of our ideas, and we came up with this idea to like, it was about, I'd say 1,000, I mean like 3-4 football fields. It was long.
Yeah.
It was this gulch that runs through this property, a friend of ours property, where, we had the idea to run a string from one end all the way to the other. And it's not like a cookie cutter field. It's like you're cutting through, there's a cliff on one side, there's like trees that you have to like step over. We thought, well, why don't we have them go out into the darkness, like pitch black, and find the string? And the idea, what was the verse that you gave?
Oh man, terrible. But the verse was about, fear not, trust in the Lord.
Yes.
Basically
Find
don't
courage.
Let fear. Yeah. Courage. Yeah.
Yes. So we gave him this talk around the idea of like life, stepping into life is like, it's blind. It's like walking in the darkness. A lot of your choices and decisions can feel vulnerable because
all right, hang on real quick, because I felt like a total idiot. Okay, so it was Joshua 1:9. It says, have I not commanded you, be strong and courageous, do not be afraid, do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. So that was the verse.
Yes, that's the verse. That's awesome. So no, I couldn't remember it either. So we give them this talk, and we have this idea that, okay, like though you may be stepping out into the blind and like into life and not and making decisions that you have yet to experience, you can trust in this, that the Lord will be with you, that God will be with you. And so we got them together. We didn't tell them what we were doing, and we took them into we hiked them down, and we had them be quiet. We made a serious moment, and then we had them grouped together, and we took one of them individually and walked them about 50 feet away from the camp, the group of guys, and then we divulged the idea of what they were going to do. So we had a bunch of staffs on the ground, and the staff represented um, all the things they'd overcome up to that point, in a way that they could take courage, and that they have been in hard things. They have stepped into dark and blind spots in their life where they haven't known or how to make that choice, but they could take courage because they've overcome. And then they would take the staff, and that could be a guide. But basically, we told them, we're going to turn the slide off now, and you're going to step out, and about 50 feet ahead is a glow stick with a string, and then that string will guide you all the way to the other end. And then we turn the light off, we prayed for them, we encouraged them, and then we set them off on their journey. And every time we do each kid, Ned and I would just be geeking out, like, this is so cool. Like, these kids, like, dude, we were so impressed with them because they were scared. And when you turn that light off, it was dark.
Yeah.
And we'd always say, like, up ahead is a cliff on your right, so you got to stay to your left.
Or like, use the stick in your right hand side. Yeah. Use your stick and poke on the edge to make sure you don't fall down the cliff.
Yeah. It would have been, they wouldn't have fallen to their death, but they could have stepped over and
rolled 20 feet, whatever.
Yeah, exactly. But every kid just went into it with such a like determination, and each of them would say, "Yeah, I was scared," like after the fact, but I was like, "Yeah, once I did it, it felt so good to get out there." And yeah, it was awesome. I think they were all really, really stoked on it.
Yeah, man, it was so cool. You know, we had this moment before we went down where just hit the perfect night sky, right? It's like we couldn't have planned it.
Yeah.
And so we had this moment around the campfire, and just out of nowhere, we're kind of like, what is everybody grateful for? And it was like 15 minutes. We went around and we're just like oohing and awing over the stars, and think it's 4 dads and 7 boys between the ages of like 11 to 15. And then it was talk about courage, right? To boys, like, dude, I want to be talked about courage too. I'm 40, you know? And then we go and yeah, I mean, when Davidson and I would turn off the light, like right before we turn it off, you'd see, I don't want to say fear, but like they were afraid in a sense, but not one of them. Because we're like, okay, in 50 feet, which it turned out to be like 125 feet of walking with nothing to the glow stick. And then they could grab this string and go. The 2 other dads are at the other end. None of them said, I don't want to do it. I'm not going. And as I kind of thought about that later, it's like, dude, our young men want to be called into, this is dangerous. You have what it takes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Oh so my good. Gosh. It was so good. And then what was dope is like these kids are joking and farting on each other and throwing firecrackers at us and stupid, annoying teenage boy stuff.
Yeah.
But then, the next morning they're off goofing around, and then we're like, hey, we're going to journal about last night. And I tell you, man, we asked them a couple questions, and each one of them showed up with something that impacted them from the night before.
Yeah. I think that's what it was too. When each kid we drew down, and we would sit with them and share with them, the vision of what they were embarking into. It was like, it felt sacred. Like each kid, you could feel it. You could feel like something welled up in them, where there was like this, like, and I don't know what that is. Like when we step into life and there's something fearful, and you're feeling, I guess when you, as adults, even when you're in a hard thing and you have one person encourage you to say, I believe you can do this, dude.
Yeah.
You can get through this.
Yeah.
And I think like when someone believes in you, there's something that draws an emotion in you that it maybe yeah, maybe there's something there where you're like, oh yeah, like they believe me. I can do this, and like to have two dads standing over them, just encouraging them like, yeah, you got this. You're going to get to the other end. Like
Yeah.
it was really.
And that part we made up on the fly. And so I want to encourage dads to just go create the space. If you create the moment and you're in the moment, this is something I've really been leaning into, is like if we planned, okay, from 6 to 7 when we're doing, because we played capture the flag, but it wasn't at the exact time we said we were going to do, right? And then from 6 to 6:30, we're doing this. If you get too caught up in doing it right, you will not be present. You will not be in it. And so if you can show up and create this space and in a sense, just be in tune with the moment. And that's why I said we only did half the ideas we came up with, because we realized, hey, it's not the right time to do this. Let's do this next time, because some of it is just the playing the capture the flag and goofing off and shooting guns and doing whatever it is you want to do. Some of it's the in between, the other moments. But something that you said, it felt sacred. Like we couldn't have made that moment. Like that moment happened because the space was there.
Yeah. No, definitely. Yeah, it was definitely a sacred moment. It felt really like it was impacting me as much as I think it was impacting the kids, because I was going like, this is my boy.
Yeah.
Like he is, and the imagery of it all like was so profound, in that like in reality he's going to go into life as he leaves the home one day, and he's going to hit hard situations, hard obstacles. And I hope he recalls this moment of like, oh yeah, my dad reminded me of it, to be courageous. Like I'm not alone, and I am walking into this, but to find that I have overcome harder things, and I have stepped into hard things, and I made it to the other end. I'm like, man, if this could be those moments that he could look back on and be like, oh yeah, when he's facing those real challenges that are gonna shape him.
Yeah, I think that's the other thing that's really important is there wasn't a leader of this. Us four dads are all men who are pursuing, working on ourselves, working on our marriages. And so when you and I stood there and spoke into a kid together, there was something powerful to work together. I have a great picture of Jesse standing around the fire at, whatever, 9:00 at night with no shirt on. He stood up to share a story that was like, whoa, bro.
Yeah.
And then the next day, Josh led a little morning devotion on something. And the thing is dads, you all have something to give, and not just to your own kid, but to your neighbor's kid and your brother's kid and your friend's kid. Like Davidson had words for my son after he spoke. We spoke to my son and sent my son down. Davidson always we're always like, dude, that was so sick. Walking back, trying to be quiet because we want to keep it like somber for the kids. But I was like, hey, dude, thank you so much for what you said to my son.
Yeah. It's the elders, the tribe of elders speaking over our kids.
Yes. Like, your kids need a tribe of mentors.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dude, so good. Okay. I'm going to ask you a question and then we'll see if there's any last stories you want to share. Okay, so this podcast is Fatherhood Field Notes, right? And you're already doing it. Open up your life, sharing your field notes, us sharing some stories. But the mantra behind it is rebel and create. And it's like, what's something you're rebelling against, fighting against, but not just to be rebellious, to create something beautiful out of it. And when you think about that, is there anything that you're rebelling against? Could be having your phone at the dinner table on a Sunday, to I'm rebelling against, whatever. And then what do you hope to create of that? Is there anything that comes to mind? Oh, shoot, you muted. Maybe the earbuds died. And it's all good, dude. We'll cut this out.
There, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay, sorry. Are you able to cut that?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, for me, I think what comes up when I think about rebelling, I'm like, I really, truthfully, honestly want my priority to be a husband and a father first, beyond anything else.
Yeah.
And so like, there's times where I will be faced with, oh man, if I just selfish moments, I want to rebel against those selfish moments that come up against me to say, I deserve this. I justify my desire to go want to do this because look at all I do. And I'm like, it's usually when my emotional tank's down, or I'm pretty exhausted and I haven't maybe led myself well in my rhythms. And then I'm like, I just grow selfish, and I'm like, I don't want to. I want to rebel against that selfish instinct to want, because there'll be time for that. My kids' lives will go by in a flash, and I'm like, I can suck some of these things up for the next 20 years. I will have. So I'll never look back. I remember saying this to myself. I'll never look back and be like, man, I wish I worked more.
Yeah.
Oh, I wish I would have gone in more man adventures. But I will look back and think, man, I wish I had spent more time with my family. I wish I'd poured into my kids more. And so like, I'm rebelling against that instinctive, selfish desire in me to want more for myself.
Yeah. Yeah. That's huge. So what's something that you do when you find yourself, because all us dudes were like, we'll get caught up in like, God knows what, fishing or golf or whatever. And I'm not saying don't do those, but the amount of time that we can obsess learning about like a lure or a golf club or a surfboard or like these forks for my dirt bike. It's crazy, dude. We can get so gnarly about something. What do you do in those moments to be like, oh, dude, this isn't what's most important to me?
Luckily I've come to terms with a lot of that years ago. The hobby related stuff, I may choose to like set out on an adventure every 3 months or so for myself, but beyond that, I'm pretty much locked in with my kids, and I enjoy my moments. If I'm doing something like that, I miss not. I always wish I had my son with me.
I know, right? Yeah,
and
totally.
That one's not as. Work can become a challenge for me. I'll get into the grind and really like think like, I could get this next job and make more money, or I could do this and that'd be good. I really have to put some boundaries up in that department for sure. So for that one, it's like, I think learning to for a long time, I'd work weekends and I stopped doing that. I don't touch Saturdays and Sundays. I mean, if I'm honest, maybe 2 times a year. But for the most part, I really try to lock that in. And I think, if that's answering the question,
no, it's beautiful.
Really try to
that. One last question before I ask my final question. And that is, because you and I are closer, so we kind of know each other. We know how we're raising our kids. It's like there's this wrestle of how to raise your kids in some light, school, homeschool. Does any of it matter kind of thing?
Yeah, we talked about that.
So with this, when your son is walking out of the house, okay, at whatever, 18, 19, 20 years old, what do you want him to know? Like when he's walking out, what's the couple things that you're like, as long as he knows this, that's all I need him to know?
Yeah. I mean, I always say like academically, like, unless I saw like a prodigy or some sort of like genius in my kids where they're like academically like ridiculous, which up to this point, I might see that in one of them where they're like really engaged with school. I just would ideally like them, know how to read really well, have a passion for learning, passion for problem solving, math, basic math. But I think the main things is like, I want their character in line. I want to see them, I want them to be kind, respectful. I want to see that those character elements, really there. I do this thing where I'm pulling out a life skill a month where I want to see life skills like time management, like, certain things that's this month. So that's kind of why I said that one specifically, but, you could go down the line, like, um, public speaking, like things that you want to just challenge them with to like have a life skills, like a good round, just all around life skill elements that they can go out and be pretty secure in.
Yeah, that's good.
Character, know their values, those kind of elements.
So if you were to say character, what are 3 words you would say to nail down what does it mean to have the character of the Brooks family?
I mean, we're big on kindness, respect. Yeah, like my wife would be really good at this. She's so intentional with that stuff. I would say something that really defines the Brooks family. Like, I would hope to think that if people were to walk away with being in our presence, they would all come away having said, man, I feel better having been in their presence. I feel more encouraged. I feel that, empowered,
dude,
in a way.
Okay, like, bro, here's why I laughed. Because like you are like looking up kind of like, oh man, like, if you were to look at you, it'd be like, this guy is struggling through what to say. That's how you feel, maybe.
Yeah.
But here's what you said, dude. You said kindness out the gate, which I was just talking to my wife the other day, and she was saying something about this, about at the end of the day, like, if you can just be kind to me. She was referring to somebody else, that kindness, right? Like, to be kind to somebody. So that was your words, like, be kind. Like, because to be kind means you're not being selfish, ultimately.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ultimately, yeah,
so
exactly.
you said kindness, then you said respect, which again is honoring somebody else. Right? Honoring somebody else. And then I love it. You're like, dude, I wish my wife was here. And to me, that means that you guys are aligned, right? You rely on each other. You're not like, oh yes, the Brooks are boom, boom, boom. You took a pause and you're like, dude, not that I can't have a voice without my wife, but we are one. We answer this stuff together. So I think that was a killer one. And then when you ended it with, when people leave our presence, meaning that you're present when people are around, they feel better about who they are. Yeah. Like, dude, what's more beautiful than that? Respect, kindness, unity with a spouse, and being present. So I laugh because I go, those things are 100% in you. They are things that you're doing. And I think that they're so powerful, which really, dude, answers my last question, which was, what's the legacy you want to leave? And I mean, you can answer that question a different way if you like, but to me, you answered it in what you want your kids to walk away from your home with.
Yeah, that's good.
Dude, I learn so much when I'm with you, bro.
Dude, I feed off you, man. You honestly, I was telling someone the other day, I was like, man, when you get around Ned, like, don't you just feel motivated? Like, I
don't know if that's good or bad.
Well, I feel like, oh man, like you kind of draw this, like, maybe this is like what coming away from you is like, I feel with a desire to break off some passivity and be like, man, go get it. Like you have more in you. Like, and it's encouraging because like seeing you, watching you live your life, like you were so intentional. And I mean, I don't think that camping thing would have gotten going. Obviously, when you were the one that intentionally said, let's get this thing going, and led that out really well. So I feel that same. It's mutual, bro.
Well, thank you, dude. Thank you so much. So, dude, before we go, is there any last stories that I'm sure we could do a podcast a year. We probably should. Is there any last stories now, though, that we didn't touch on that you're like, man, I would hate to have missed saying this?
No, but I just would say, like, it's given that it is a father podcast, like, I think I jumped into your program, the Adventure of Fatherhood. Is that the course?
Yeah.
Yeah. The Adventure of Fatherhood course we did about a month ago, we just finished. And one of the profound things I got from that was like, like, we're not just fathers to our children. Like, it's like an embodiment. Like, I'm this afternoon, I have a bunch of housemates. So my house is a double story, and we rent the bottom, and they're all young college kids. And I'm outside working. I'm busy. I'm trying to get stuff done. And this kid rolls up in his moped, and he's probably 20. And he starts to like tell me that, dude, I got to tell you something, this story that just happened to me. And he was visibly shaken, looked like he was even emotional, thinking like about the situation. And I was like, wow, like, I have an opportunity to, I've been through life. I'm older.
Yeah.
I have an opportunity to play that embodied role of being a father. And I remember in your course having heard that, and I was like, wow, that's really how I should go and approach and walk about my life. It's not just to my own kids, but live with the intention of like, there's so many fathers, young men, young adults, who could also use some encouragement and some presence, fatherly presence.
Dude.
So I hope that story lands.
Yeah, no, it lands and it hits me because like I have my journal in front of me and I have this page. I've been like, what is fatherhood, right? Like continuously digging into what is fatherhood. But when you say that, what really hit me is the simplicity of I'm available, right?
Yeah.
To embody being a father is I'm available for you. What do you need?
Yeah.
And like, how often do we walk around our life like that, dude? I'm like walking around like, how do I grow? How do I learn? How do I make my family better? But to be like, there's a kid on a moped. Hey, God, how could I show up right now for this guy? What does he need? And just be there with open arms. Like, dude, that's the embodiment of a father. And I think what a great way to end this conversation, that if we can just have our eyes open to the opportunities that come before us each day, then I believe that God can entrust more opportunities to us, because it's like, hey, if I send that kid down the street of Ned or Davidson, that kid's going to be seen. He's going to be noticed.
Yeah.
He's going to be listened to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Shoot, bro. You know how many people
like when you imagine when you're 20, you can imagine when you're 20 and feeling the need to just feel affirmed, like you're doing it. You're doing a good job, man. And I feel like, I want to be that for young men. Hey, you're doing a good job, dude. You're making it through life. Life's hard. You're making it. You're doing it right, And I think a lot of young men just are hungry and just really eager for that.
So hungry, bro. Just for somebody worthy of following a leader who will listen to them. So, dude, I'm going to ask you my last question, and you can kind of answer it however you want to. But imagine 50 years from now, you're coming up on 90, you're still surfing, you're still fishing, and you look into the homes. Okay, so one time we were surfing in Trussels, and there was this guy out there, and he was 87. No joke. It was amazing. Okay, so imagine, legacy question. Imagine 50 years from now, you're peering into the homes of your children. What is it that you see being played out, and you go, dang, yes, a smile's on my face because I showed up. What is it that you see in their house, in their homes?
Man, just sharing that imagery, it makes me emotional thinking about my kids that far out. Yeah. I would imagine I'd like to see a safe place, a place that, you know, they could cultivate something where their kids are drawn into their home and desire to feel as though if I could be anywhere, I want to be here. Could imagine, just them sitting around laughing and enjoying each other, and my sons being that emotional support and that strong, powered man. And the wife's like looking at them and with, that level of respect and just the passion in the eyes. It would just all be, just tons of, I would say for me, if I think about it, it's not like the house or the physical things. It's always that emotional piece that I would love for them to just feel safe in that home where they all feel that presence of warmth, of love, and, deep, deep relationships with God. And they're all encouraged by each other. And I don't know how to answer that correctly, but I think that's the emotional piece I would love to see in the home.
Dude, okay, so check it. One, Davidson, the work that you have done, your ability to be present in as a man, as a husband, as a father, as a friend, like, dude, you clearly have done amazing work. And I would just speak life to you to go, dude, own that, because you said some beautiful things. And then you're like, I don't know if I answered that correctly, but it's like, dude, you just spewed gold, bro.
Well, I think because with emotion, it's so vague, and I'm like, I don't know how to give that language.
It's so vague, but you said these are the things I wrote down: a safe place, and you said cultivate, which means that you have built this. Like this takes work. To make a safe place, it takes work. So you're like, dude, my kids did the work. And then I love this sentence, like, how beautiful. If I could be anywhere, I want to be here. And for you to create a place where, I've always said this to Sarah, I want our kids to be able to walk in from the chaos of the world and just take their shoes off and just lay on the freaking middle of the floor and just feel like, I can just be so safe here, lay it all down, no matter what happened today. And I know you're building that in your home. I know my kids feel it when they go to your house. And so, dude, keep pursuing life the way you are. I'm honored to be your friend. I'm honored that our kids are friends. I look forward to all of us cultivating deeper, long-lasting relationships around the island, around our creator, around family. So thank you, dude. Thank you for sharing your life on here with me on a Monday night. And dude, I just look forward to more conversations like this, recorded or not.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It's been rich. I definitely enjoy our times together. We could go on and on and on. Anytime you get,
I know.
You'll pull up to my house. I'll pull up to your house, drop a kid off. You'll come to the window. I'm like, oh man, we could be here another hour.
Yeah, but we're both usually like one eye's slowly asleep.
For sure.
Oh,
Guaranteed.
dude. All right, bro. Until next time.
Okay.
All right. Peace. What an incredible conversation. I so love this man's family, his kiddos. I enjoy getting to do life with their family. What really stuck out to me in this conversation was, one, not making people feel like a burden. This came up in our conversation about marriage, but it kind of got me thinking, the things we say and do, in what ways are we making our kind of personal, taking a personal, being selfish, and then making somebody feel like a burden? So that really stuck out to me. The other thing that I really enjoyed, whether he did it intentionally or not, he really leaned into this deep connection he has with his spouse in really operating as one. They're both individuals, but there's a unity there, something that I think many of us long for in our marriages. So really, there was a couple moments where that really stuck out to me. The last thing that really stuck out to me that I want to make mention of is letting your kids feel the situation that they are in and then empowering them, not doing it for them, empowering them, and then not necessarily putting up guardrails or catching them to a degree where they're not feeling the situation so that they can learn from it. Now, Dad, that really requires us to know who we are. Okay. Now, the world would look and feel different if men showed up in their identity to love, serve, guide, provide, and protect. And this is why I launched Adventure of Fatherhood. So please go check it out, adventureoffatherhood.com. It started with a kid's book, with a gift box for a new dad, and now we have rolled out courses on fatherhood, introductory course, discover fatherhood course, as well as some other courses in there to help empower fathers to understand who they are in their homes. I want to say thank you to all you dads out there listening to Rebel and Create's Fatherhood Field Notes podcast. What you do matters. Don't be like everybody else. Be yourself. That is who your kids, spouse, and community needs. This is your guide, Ned. Shout together. Let's rebel against the view that fatherhood has little impact and create lives engaged in mastering the craft of fatherhood. I look forward to hanging out with you next time.